am a woman in long-term recovery, coming up on 22 years in May 15th to be exact. I am the clinical manager and recovery coach supervisor at Power of Recovery in Revere. I also direct a trauma response team in Charlestown called CHAT, which stands for Charlestown. My name is Shannon Lundin. I am a woman in long-term recovery, coming up on 22 years in May 15th to be exact. Charlestown at one point had the highest fatal overdose rate in Massachusetts, so that's where I'm from. And Charlestown's 1 square mile. So, you know, the highest fatal overdose rate in Massachusetts in 1 square mile is a big deal. We're all connected in so many different ways, and it impacts community members and family. One thing that I say on a regular basis, and I've been saying for years, is so like you hear people talking about, oh, marijuana is the gateway drug, oh, alcohol is the gateway drug. I truly believe that some form of trauma is the gateway drug.
Yes.
And so for a lot of people that I think that have like generational trauma, that's where it starts. And then there like might be people who were raised in like good homes and went to good schools, and then they have some sort of like accident, that physical trauma, then got put on pain medication, but that's a trauma in itself that opened the door to their substance use disorder. One thing that I recognize is, you know, I got it at 25 years old, and that's just not a common thing for a girl from Charlestown who's an IV heroin user, who's overdosed multiple times, you know, lived through the whole OxyContin epidemic. I've outlived all my childhood friends. So I realized getting it at 25 years old is not something that you hear every day. So I'm very, very grateful for that. There were a number of different moments where, you know, I decided that this is what I wanted to do. At first, when someone said, oh, you should get into the field of addiction and recovery, you could be a counselor or a case manager. And, you know, that was in my early recovery days. So you know how we are, like we beat ourselves up. We don't think we're worth anything. We don't think we have anything to offer. So I kind of just brushed it off. And I realized like what was meant for my harm, God is going to use for good. And so I wanted to pursue that and explore that more. I was on probation in Charlestown court, not for anything crazy, but when I was in active addiction. And I got stipulated to the Meridian House. My probation officer at that time was Stephen DeLuca. After I left the Cushing House, I worked for a community coalition. Part of my role was to do outreach in the community to people that were struggling in active addiction. A lot of times people called me to get them into detox, to get them into CSS, to help find them a primary care physician, just like basic need stuff. When I first started doing this back then, an outsider wouldn't have been able to come in and do that. They would have been like, who are you? You know, so like having someone with like myself with that lived experience, kind of meeting people where they were at and helping connect them to the appropriate resources is kind of what builds that like trust and that reputation for me, right? So then I started going down the court and advocating for people to get treatment instead of jail time. Out of that, the Charlestown Drug Court was born. So I developed the Charlestown Drug Court in 2012 with my former probation officer. When I think about significant obstacles that I had to face, not just in my early career, but in my early recovery, they're all really personal. It's more about like the losses I've suffered. I've outlived all my childhood friends, right? And so like a lot of times I have like this survivor's guilt, like why me? Why am I here? Why have I been afforded all of these like opportunities to grow in my recovery and grow in my career to be able to help people? And you know, and then I asked the question, well, why not me? I also did the work, you know, because I fall short. I might be sober 22 years. You know, I might have overcome a lot. I might have achieved a lot, but I still fall short on a daily basis. But I figure out ways to manage and get those things in that are important for my own personal self-care, because if I don't take care of myself, then the other stuff that I need to do isn't going to work right. As a woman in recovery, I would say to another woman, like there's a scripture in the Bible that says you are fearfully and wonderfully made. We are made in the image of God. And so when we beat ourselves up and talk bad about ourselves, we're going against God's masterpiece, God's design, right? He has a plan and a purpose. His plan is to prosper you, not to harm you, to give you a future and a hope. But I also believe we have an enemy. And addiction is a tactic of that enemy who's going to whisper in our ear. He talks to us in our own voice and is going to tell us, you're not good enough, you suck. We got to take those thoughts captive and replace it with what God says about us.